Good morning.
Good morning.
We are William Frank Diedrich, Michael A. Lamaro, and John Bailey. And we are the authors of the book, The Practice of Letting Go. And this is our first podcast. Our topic today is about parents and children and other family members not being able to speak to each other. We're coming on the holidays right now, and there are some people who won't be seeing or talking to each other during those holidays because of family conflicts. And so let's talk about that a little bit. And let me throw it open to you guys. First of all, if you're the parent of adult children and your children won't talk to you, how do you practice letting go, and what do you do about that?
Well, I think the beginning point is to find out why, to understand between the two of you what exactly is happening or not happening, and create a common platform to work from.
I think that's
Yeah,
that's good advice, John. And I know one situation where the mom, her son won't talk to her, and she sent him a message wishing him happy holidays and telling him that he is the greatest gift that was ever came to her in her life. And he sent back a nasty note, and he won't tell her what's wrong. He just won't talk to her.
yeah,
I
So what
that's
do
think,
you
tough.
do?
You leave the door open. That's what I tell. I've got a number of situations like this, and you have to understand what you're in control of, right? And so, what's the serenity prayer, right? Have the
Mhm.
serenity to understand that we don't have control, so it's control the controllables. And the one thing that we can do as parents is to leave the door open. Always have that invitation. So, regardless of the response, right? Being able to accept the response for what it is, even though you may not understand where it's coming from, you can still forgive and have compassion for your adult child and continue to leave the door open. I think what happens is when the other person's feelings are so hurt or they're so angry that they slam the door shut, and now there's really no opportunity for healing to take place. So at least one of the people in the relationship has to keep that door open and that open invitation to saying, if all you want to do is yell at me, I'll take that for right now because that's better than nothing.
I find that when someone is really angry, and I'm thinking of this situation, that even the kind words, the graceful words that one side expresses, the one who is really angry will perceive that as manipulative, that you're trying to change my feelings either by guilting me or that somehow I'll be convicted by your kind words, but I'm interpreting it through my anger. That filter is very active and it doesn't receive it, uh, which I think Mike is right. I mean, you have to keep the door open, and it may be following up that rejection of those words with the why question. I'm kind of a Simon Sinek fan that you got to ask why several times, sometimes to get to the root.
Mhm. Well, some of the cases I'm familiar with, the why is well understood. For example, a parent who um, was not happy in his marriage, ended up having an affair, getting divorced, and the children who at the time were, not adults, but they were high school. The oldest ones were in high school. The oldest one might even have been in college at that point. And the one daughter, who probably was high school age at that time, was so angry and clearly took sides, siding with the mother. The dad, who was a very good dad, very hands-on, had a great relationship with his kids before this had happened, um, was the villain. And the mother supported that story and really advocated for that kind of villainizing her ex at this point. And the anger was so deep that when she grew up, got married, dad wasn't invited to the wedding. when she had children, wasn't invited to the baptism or to participate in any of the family gatherings around that. And it was hard to see how tough that was for him, right, to be in that villain, but he understood why. And it's the long game, right? You have to be patient. I felt bad for the children who couldn't get past that, right? They didn't have compassion or forgiveness, didn't even want to really understand the dad's side of the story. They made their decision. It was black and white. And to this day, and it's been probably, I don't know, I want to say 20 to 30 years now, at least 20. And some of them have come back and have established a relationship with dad. Others refuse to do so. But the dad he's accepted, you know, the situation. He's tried to keep the door open. The door's still open, but you can't make somebody walk through that door. So it's tough to see, but the why is well known, but people cling to their pain, their anger. That's why we have to let go.
So it sounds like one of the important things here, in these examples we're talking about where the children won't talk to the parents, is acceptance of what is, because you can't control it. And if you can somehow come to peace with what is, and as you said, Mike, play the long game and still love them as best you can from afar, that's the best way you can handle this.
There is a dynamic that uh, when you're trying everything, you're trying to exhaust your resources, your creativity, and approaching the situation, that the more you expend that effort, the farther you push away the one you're trying to connect with or reconnect with. And for someone, and it really depends on your own personality and temperament of being able to let go, because you want to control outcomes. You want to push hard and try to get this healed and control the outcome as the way you want it or hope it to be. And in that process, you create a larger or ever increasing chasm between the two of you. And to be able to let go and just stop and be at peace, saying, I've extended the olive branch, so to speak. And if they refuse it, then I will continue to live within that context with it. And like Mike says, keep the door open. And that's not an easy thing to do when you really love somebody. And for me, as a man of faith, I committed to a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation, and I don't talk to a lot of people about it because I'm waiting on really inspiration, revelation, something that I had not considered. But that letting go part is not easy.
Yeah, and the other side too. I mean, from the, whether it's the adult or the parent, the person that is really harboring the anger, right? That's the person that I would be focusing on, but they have to be receptive, right? They have to have the awareness to see that the anger that they're clinging to is damaging themselves, right? We tend to think that, well, I'm going to punish this other person by clinging to that anger, and that's my source of revenge almost. But they don't necessarily see how it's holding back their own personal growth and their ability to relate to others in a meaningful way. So this idea of letting go of one's anger, that's hard, especially when you've been clinging to it for years. But that's why we wrote the book, right? There's so many techniques that
Yeah.
we can practice to try to open people's eyes, first of all, to the consequences for themselves. It's not about the other person. They got to start to focus on, what is this anger doing to me? And am I willing to accept the negative consequences of clinging to my anger? Because if not, again, we can't help them. But when you can kind of show them that this is for themselves, right? I tell that about people for forgiveness. forgiveness is for you. It's about letting go of your anger towards the other person that you think has offended or hurt you in some way.
True. It's like that old saying, holding on to anger and unforgiveness is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to keel over.
That's good. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. I think the whole aspect of unforgiveness is failing to recognize how it binds your life, your heart.
Mm.
It then uh, keeps you from being able to freely express, to love, to receive love. It completely chains you to this anger, and it restricts your life. You stop enjoying life to its fullest. I think when Jesus said, "When I set you free, you're free indeed," is that in that there's nothing that will bind you. I always liked the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the three followers of God who were thrown into the fiery furnace, and they did not burn. But the only thing that did burn was the ropes that bound them. And I think it's getting people to recognize you're tying the ropes around yourself, and you need to let those go.
Yeah, I had that realization, John. I feel like I spent the first half of my life tying myself into knots, and I'm spending the second half of my life untying those knots. Yeah.
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 It sounds like what you guys are saying is good advice for the adult children about letting go of unforgiveness, but it also goes for the uh, parents, because I know parents who in this situation, when they experience this rejection, they turn around then and reject the child and say, okay, if you're not going to talk to me, then I've had it with you. We're done.
Hmm. That's
And
right.
they, in a sense, uh, cut the children out of their life, even out of their mind and heart as best they can. And so they're really putting themselves in the same situation that their children are and carrying that pain, whether they're acknowledging or not.
Yeah, I just bumped into an acquaintance the other day, and we, got into a conversation, and in a relatively short conversation, he managed to tell me that his son was so angry with them, had been so for so many years. He just, no matter what he tried, it just, there was nothing he could do to get through. I think he was bordering on what John was referring to later, trying to manipulate his adult son's behavior. And I say that because his ultimate resolution was to basically say, I'm off camera here for a minute, is to say, I'm going to cut him out of my will. That's
Mm.
his resolution. Can't let go
It's
on either
interesting,
side.
the comment that he says that he couldn't get through. It reminds me of that Stephen Covey story, where the guy comes up to him at a convention and says, I, I don't understand my son. I can't get through to him. Um, and so you don't understand your son because you can't get through to him. Um, and yeah, that's what I said. He says, well, I thought that you understood somebody else by letting them get through to you, by you listening to them, in other words. And I thought that was a good way of looking at it, that we think, I've tried everything, but yeah, have you listened though?
Yeah, it's that old adage, seek to understand before being understood. I think that's
Exactly. Yeah.
real wisdom.
Yeah.
Covey used to also demonstrate in his presentations. He would pair off with someone and grab their hand, and there's his, and he would say, "All right, I'm going to try to pull you over. You try to pull me over." And of course, the first reaction is tension. But what Covey would
Hmm.
do is completely relax. And as soon as the other person pulled him over, he was able to pull them right back over because there was no tension between them. And I think that these conflicts are the pairing off and trying to pull in almost an emotional tug of war fashion, pull the other over when if you let go and release, then you can move towards them. And this is a little bit of getting to yes, is negotiating from their side of the equation. But they pull you over, and then you easily bring them back and you begin this dialogue once again. But as long as you're in a tug of war, nobody wins.
Yeah.
And in many
Eh,
cases, that tug of war is a silent one.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Communication lines are broken.
Yeah.
This is why, we spend a lot of time talking about victimhood in the book. And
Mhm.
I think the tension is because each person is clinging to their version of a victim story, and they're trying to pull you over into my story. Why can't you see how you have victimized me, how you have hurt me? And when
Yeah.
they're both trying to do that, they can't see anything other than their own victimhood. And again, this whole process of beginning to let go of the emotion behind the story and eventually reframe the story that includes both sides, where real understanding can happen, and with that understanding can come compassion and forgiveness.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where we tend to go as human beings, is we only see our own side, and we look at the world in terms of what are other people doing to me, or what should they be doing for me, as opposed to how am I affecting the other person? How am I affecting my children or my parents or whoever? So this is very painful for the people that I know that are in these situations. Uh, there's not much pain that is worse than this, as having your own child completely reject you, which is why some go to completely rejecting the child as a defense, and others just sit there and they're hurt, or they keep trying or whatever. So, what do you do if you're in this situation? What do you do with these feelings of deep hurt? And let's say this hurts so much you find yourself not being able to think about anything else. It's just like weighs on you so heavily. What do you do with this extremely negative and painful emotional state?
I think that's a great question, because hurt will, if not tended with, will eventually evolve into anger. It's a natural progression.
Hmm.
Uh, and I'm not sure many folks know how to deal with the hurt. Anger seems to flow kind of naturally out of it. but,
Yeah, yeah,
but when my heart is broken and there's been a rebellion, a rejection, uh, an ostracizing, whatever has taken place, then I must go into myself first and deal with the hurt. And a lot of people do that in different ways. To me, peace is the greatest sign that I've got my thoughts and my heart all lined up, because I'm at peace. If there's anything that's disrupting that peace, I need to call that out. I need to identify it. And with hurt, and I've been hurt in my life at times, and I tend to go inward. And for me, it's there in I meet God. And God, when Jesus was asked, he said, "Go into your closet and pray, close the door and pray, and God will meet you there." Is that going in the closet is not literally finding a closet in my house and getting into it. I think I'm the closet, and I shut the world off, where I can simply encounter my creator, the power that's greater for me, greater than me, so that I might be able to uh, regain my peace. And that sometimes comes through evaluating what I've said, what I've done, what I'm feeling, how my expressions, the tone even, am I am I pure in all of my motivations and my intentions? And once I've regained the peace, then I can s- stop that hurt from progressing to anger. I can stay within that framework and try to figure out next steps.
Yeah, I like that, John, as opposed to lashing out or covering it up with whatever addictions a person might have, is you go in and you deal with it face to face. And then
Yes.
what you're saying is you do it in a very spiritual way. You look to God for help in terms of that. What do you think, Mike?
I love that. You both know that I love that answer. For me, when I was really playing with this early on, when I was starting to be to kind of awaken to these ideas, I realized that the hurt was being constantly reinforced by the story that would just
Uh-huh.
churn over and over in my mind, that was reinforcing the hurt, reinforcing, reminding me, constantly reminding me of the pain, like reliving the event. And that would lead to other emotions, right? So again, hurt would become anger, blame, all of those things that you talked about. And so for me, the shortcut was to just have an awareness of the need to hit the pause button on the story, that the story wasn't helping me. It was actually hurting me. It was keeping me stuck, like this whirlpool, this eddy of story was just keeping me stuck in the pain. And that I had to go through that step first, John, in order to then introspect and say, can I go into the hurt? Can I go into the pain and examine it without the story that is justifying my pain, rationalizing, explaining my pain? Because those just reinforced my victimhood and deepened my feeling of anger or villainizing the other person. So I
Yeah.
really needed to do that, and for me, I'm up in my head. I used to pride myself on my intellect, not so much on my emotional intelligence. And so that was a hard thing for me. And so, others may have a different path, but I had to shut off the thinker. I just had to let go of the story and then get into the emotion and just allow myself to feel it without justifying it. Just, it is what it is. And I had to let it wash through me. And then when I was able to release the pain, I was able to tell myself a different story. I could reframe the story in a way that said, this isn't the whole story. I'm only focusing on a little piece of the story, that piece that justifies my pain. What if I can experience the pain, diminish the pain long enough for me to zoom out and accept a larger story
Yeah.
that includes the other person's perspective, includes the role that I may have played in the drama,
Sure.
right? It creates a greater understanding and a willingness to show compassion for the others.
Those are
But
good
that,
points, Mike. Yeah. For myself, I I like what you said. I go into the feeling and let myself feel it. But then I find sometimes the story is so strong and so repetitive, and the feelings are so strong that I can barely manage it. So then I do something similar to what John says, and I call upon, for me, I call upon the presence of God within me. You could call upon the Holy Spirit. You could call upon God. You can call upon your higher self. However you do it, whatever your spiritual connection is to call upon that and give the story over to Spirit. And then what I'm really saying is, let me see this through your eyes instead of the eyes of this personality that's seeing nothing but conflict and nothing but victimhood. And then the chore is to stop thinking about it. That's the tough part because my mind wants to keep thinking about it, and I have to take my mind away from that. Sometimes I will purposely think about something else just to distract myself from it.
mhm,
And I find that I know when I'm successful because I feel different. I immediately feel a little more peaceful. And then I can do some of the stuff that you said, Mike, is that challenge the story, ask myself, who am I being when I'm feeling and thinking like this? And is this who I want to be?
mhm,
Oh, that's great.
And I can deal with the emotions can come up again, and I can just sit with the emotions and feel them, accept them that they're here, you know, I feel hurt and it's okay that I feel hurt. I'm just going to let myself feel that hurt and I'm going to embrace myself and allow myself to be embraced by whatever God or whatever you want to call it, my higher power.
Yep.
But it is a lot of work.
A lot of work. It takes constant vigilance
Yeah.
just to deal with the pain that we're aware of now, but how to avoid becoming a victim in the future, right? So you don't have to go through this process. When you get good at processing your emotions from the past, you get good at processing your emotions in the present, so that you don't
Yeah.
have you don't create the victimhood story to begin with, and you don't have to go through it. But it's a journey.
Yeah, I liked what you said I remember at an earlier time, Mike, you said that anytime you get triggered, you become conscious and see it as an opportunity to, in essence, get rid of the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Could you
Yeah,
say a few words about that?
sure. First of all, it's a long time in coming, though, right? To be able to see all of these I like to call drama as opportunities to become a better version of myself, right? It took a long time to get to that point, but that's really what I see is, we judge life, and it comes back to the word that you brought up earlier, Bill. It's acceptance. Can I accept life as it is unfolding right in front of me and all around me, and see the blessing within that as an opportunity to again become a better version of myself? That's why I follow this path of self-realization, right? It's all about understanding who I am, not judging myself, right? Life is unfolding. It is what it is. I am being who I am in that moment, whether it's who I want to be or not. It starts with awareness. I have to have awareness of what's happening in order for me to have a conscious, intentional plan to move forward from where I find myself. Without that self-awareness and situational awareness, I don't really have a choice.
All right.
And so many people would be surprised at how much their lives are just driven by automatic programming.
Yeah.
And so this becoming a better version of yourself is about recognizing the program that's running and understand that you have the ability to change that programming once you
Yeah,
have
you do.
awareness. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're getting near the end of our time, so I wonder, John, do you have some final words on this topic for us?
Well, I think just to tag into what Mike just said, um, that awareness is really the delineation, the line of delineation between us and all the rest of creation, that we have the ability to do that. And the fact that this is a journey, that you cannot be seeking the quick fix.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take, as you said, a lot of work. And you have to be willing to commit to that work and not bail on it just because of your anger or your frustration or your impatience. You need to be committed. If this relationship's important, uh, then somewhere along the line, no preset time, resolution can be achieved. But you got two separate hearts working in uh, two separate perspectives, but you're in the same arena. So there's an opportunity there to resolve it.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Any other final words for you, Mike?
No, I think it's been great. A lot of good points
Okay.
made.
I think so too. And one thing I would add is when you have a conflict in like this, especially in family conflicts, but really any conflict, is to step back from it and realize that it's happening inside of you. It's really not about the other person. It's about what's going on inside of you because you're feeling it inside of you. You're not feeling it out here. And so, what I need to do sometimes is remind myself of the positive traits of that other person, to remind myself why I love them, or what it is about them that I love, to keep my perspective more holistic as opposed to just focusing on the conflict. All right, so thank you. This has been our first podcast from the authors of The Practice of Letting Go, which is available at our website, thepracticeoflettinggo.com. And we look forward to seeing you at our next podcast.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.